Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the captain of our ship, CEO of Plant with Purpose, Mr. Scott Sabin.
Last year, I shared the story, which at that time I'd only recently heard, of a forest that I'd been part of planting 25 years ago. When I'd last seen this land, it was utterly barren, but I was told that it had transformed an entire valley in Oaxaca, Mexico. If you could advance the slide. At that time, I'd only heard the story, but seeing is believing, and I had to go see it for myself. And so this spring, I got to walk in the shade, to smell the air and the scent of the pine needles, to touch the soil that had become dark and rich and fertile, to see the biodiversity, the epiphytes and understory and trees that we'd had nothing to do with planting, but which had grown up and filled in the area where we'd planted native trees. And to hear the river that had begun to flow again, and listen to the testimony of the families who lived there and understand how their outlook had changed, how their whole perception of what was possible had completely transformed. It was hard to believe that this was the same desert where we'd put those pitiful little seedlings so many years ago. There's a couple of you here tonight that were there with me. I think Mark Brown, Ted Hohen, there may be some others, but we're there when we put those seedlings in the ground. Back then, it was easy to look around at all the problems, the hopelessness, the hunger, the barrenness on the hillsides, and to think of them as forever problems. It's just the way it is. But seeds planted in faith and nurtured in hope can transform everything. I'm talking about seeds as a metaphor here too, of course. We don't just plant trees, we plant hope, and we plant opportunity, and we plant enterprise. We plant food, and we plant with the purpose of sharing God's love. We're lifting people out of poverty, halting and even reversing the process of deforestation, and helping to heal the relationship between God and human beings. It isn't magic. We've spent a lot of time, decades, studying the best way to plant these seeds. One of the things that I think sets Plant with Purpose apart from many of our peers is our dedication to rigorously measuring our impact and then meticulously using that data to continually refine and improve our work. And that's led us to develop an integrated model of economic empowerment, spiritual renewal, and environmental restoration. You just heard Tadele and Asmara talk about their participation in the savings groups in Ethiopia. These are the foundation for our integrated purpose groups. Like a seed, they start impossibly small. In the beginning, each person might be only saving 25 cents a week. Yet today, around the world, more than $12.2 million has been accumulated, locally generated by the participants in our program and is invested in their own communities, working right now at this moment. And furthermore, they're receiving an 18% return on those investments. Now, usually at this point, somebody asks me if they can invest alongside them. And the answer is yes, of course you can. You just have to commit to going to their weekly meetings. But savings aren't the end of the story. They're only the beginning. Most purpose group members rely on growing their own food, selling what little excess they have to produce enough money for cooking oil or school fees or a few extra things. But through our regenerative agriculture curriculum, they're able to dramatically improve their production while restoring their land at the same time. By incorporating trees on their farms and in their watersheds and mimicking nature, they, and I emphasize they, have been able to plant 61 million trees. $10 million of those were planted this year alone. And in so doing, they've completely transformed the environment that they depend on, the environment that is their livelihood. For example, in eastern Congo, the 135,000 people that we serve planted 2.5 million trees over the last 2 years. And at the same time, went from eating an average of 1.8 meals per day to 2.3 meals per day. Now, to be honest, we'd actually hoped for a little more. But you might have heard that in the last year, there was a significant drought and hunger in sub-Saharan Africa. And because we measure our impact against a neighboring control group, we were able to find out that during that same time, the neighboring group went from eating 1.6 meals per day down to 1.1 meals per day. In other words, the people we serve, the people that you serve, are eating twice as much a day, every day, because of the revitalization of their farms. And at the same time, we have a new group that we need to work with. We feel motivated to serve those who are only eating once per day. The third element includes partnering with local churches and helping our participants to understand their identity in Jesus. Purpose groups often become spiritual communities as well, studying the Word, encouraging one another, promoting peace and reconciliation in some of the most conflict-riven places on earth. Ethiopia, Eastern Congo, Haiti right now, all of them are torn by conflict. And yet the stories of reconciliation that we're hearing border on the miraculous. Even those places where there is no significant conflict, we have measured a significant change in the way community members treat one another, how they love each other, the external manifestation of the internal transformation that's taking place as they grow in their faith. And we believe that the integration of these three things, economic empowerment, environmental restoration, spiritual renewal, growing in faith, if you will, result in something far more effective and long-lasting than any one of these individual parts by themselves. Together, they have led to a 55% reduction in poverty in the regions we work. But that's not the end of the story. And I think that's the biggest message I want to leave you with tonight. That's not the end of the story. It's only the seed. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being like a mustard seed. This seed is the smallest of seeds, yet when it grows, it becomes a tree. So the birds come and perch in its branches. We're so excited about all that's been accomplished, the $12.2 million in savings being invested in local communities, the 61 million trees that have been planted, the 1,200 ongoing church partnerships. But that's really just the mustard seed. If you want to know the whole story, you have to come back. One of the criticisms of projects like ours is that oftentimes when you come back, you can't tell that they were ever there. But that has not been our experience. And I believe that's partly because we believe the people we serve are our partners, not our projects. They do most of the work. Quite honestly, we're just the catalyst. People in poverty are themselves the solution, not the problem. I believe that they're the greatest untapped resource on earth. I want to say that again. The people we serve are the greatest untapped resource on the planet. Smallholder farmers are the key to solving issues of land degradation, deforestation, and climate change. Hungry people are the key to solving issues of hunger. And we've seen that again and again. Just like those trees we planted in Oaxaca so many years ago, the real change didn't come when we left those seedlings in the ground. The real change began unfolding in the years afterwards. Bob told me a story recently of a community in Tanzania, a region that had graduated from our program 6 years ago. As he came through this community square, there was a huge agriculture fair taking place. Several thousand people were present. There were vendors and booths selling farm tools, demonstrations of various farm techniques, stuff that we didn't even teach, fish farming, all sorts of things. To his surprise, he learned that this fair was put on by a local organization that was formed by 20 of our purpose groups coming together. They had continued being the engine for change, growth, possibility, despite the fact that we'd moved on 6 years earlier. We found the same to be true around the world. The seeds we plant continue to grow. This spring, for the first time, an entire watershed graduated, the Hoilu watershed in Thailand. They had accumulated their own capital. They had participated in all the training we had to offer, and they had graduated, but that didn't stop them from continuing on to plant trees, to restore land, to invest their own money. And all of that they eagerly shared with us in a bunch of pictures and video that they just sent last week. When I was in Mexico, I visited a local volunteer group that took me to see their tree nursery, very impressive tree nursery. And then they began to tell me about the biblical mandate to care for God's creation, starting with Genesis 2:15. At first, I didn't think much about it. It's the kind of thing we talk about all the time. But then it dawned on me that this knowledge had genuinely become a part of the community, had been internalized and passed down to a whole new generation. And they were sharing it with me as if I was hearing it for the first time. In Haiti, in the absence of an effective national government, purpose groups are coming together to build and repair bridges, to build roads, to fill in the infrastructure that isn't already there. A few years ago, I was traveling in a really remote part of Haiti, and a purpose group president came and took me to see a community center that 3 purpose groups had come together to build so that they could meet. And now they were using it as a command post for hurricane relief efforts, collecting supplies, distributing them to their neighbors, helping people to repair and rebuild their houses. They had become the infrastructure. In several countries, purpose groups have gone so far as to legally incorporate, either becoming for-profit businesses or nonprofits, which can directly apply for local grants or government funding. These groups for local development, as we're calling them, have sponsored the electrification of 2 communities in the Dominican Republic, and in a 3rd community, they've sponsored the construction of an aqueduct, bringing in clean, fresh water for the first time. The seeds we plant tonight are only the beginning. I truly believe that your generosity this evening has the power to change history. We're literally writing a different future together right here, and not just for the people we serve, but for ourselves and for the entire planet. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you.